Hey, you want to fly one of these? Too bad. You gotta learn how to fly one of these first. I know. Everyone wants to be Maverick, but not everyone was given plot armor and thrown into a big budget film because they're a midget with a beautiful face. Hey there, I'm John. This is Two Brothers RC, and this is the fundamentals of flying RC planes. If you wanted to fly but you couldn't figure out where to start, join the club. There's plenty of people just like you. There's lots of info out there, but not all of it jives together. If you're wondering where the hell to start and what any of these terms actually mean, you're not alone. It can be tough, but if Cletus McFarlane can fly a plane, so can you. Lesson 1. Nobody learns how to fly without learning how to handle a plane on the ground first. I'm using the simulator RealFlight by Horizon Hobby as a good training tool for you newer pilots. Whether you're flying a plane with tricycle gear or a tailwheel fundamentally changes very little. You steer any airplane on the ground using the rudder stick, which is the left stick on a Mode 2 transmitter like mine. Moving the aircraft on the ground is called taxiing, and doing it safely requires holding elevator input with a tail dragger like this turbo timber, because the grass or other obstacles can resist the rolling of the plane and cause it to flip over on the ground. You can see me jiggling the elevator stick on the right. Pulling back on the elevator stick causes the tail to stay planted on the ground if you use the air flowing from the propeller, known as the prop wash, to force the tail firmly on the ground while you're moving it. Doing this means the tail will not rise and the plane will not flip over if a wheel hits an obstacle. Once you've mastered this technique and your taxiing doesn't look like a spinning ball of doom, you're ready to move on to powered flight. Lesson 2. Takeoffs, or what goes up should stay up.
So for takeoffs, you go ahead and you taxi out, get to your center point, try to stick to it as best you can. Don't feel bad if you mess it up, nobody is perfect. There's my center point on this crappy little runway that we've got. I'm gonna throttle up nice and slowly. And then let the plane begin to fly. Very, very easy once you get used to it, but it's gonna take a lot of practice, so don't beat yourself up if you don't get it right the first time, the first 10 times, or the first 50 times. Eventually you will get it.
Getting it is where simulator practice really comes in handy. You can mess up as many times as you want with no consequences, but you can also use a simulator to build fundamental skills. The physics of reality aren't quite modeled one-to-one in RealFlight or any other simulator that you can use, but they're good enough to learn how to fly with. Taking off is just as I mentioned earlier. Throttle up slowly, hold a little bit of back elevator pressure, and watch the plane lift off. Guide it through the sky with your aileron stick. Pick a direction and gently pull the elevator. It will go where you tell it to go. Practice this repeatedly until it becomes second nature. If you want to learn wheel takeoffs, throttle up slowly, wait for the tail to rise on its own, and then gently pull the elevator and lift the plane up into the sky gracefully. Like anything, the more you practice, the better you will get. If Cletus can do this, you can do it too. Lesson 3. What went up should come down. In one piece. Landing is more difficult than taking off. Part of that is not practicing. Another part is...
Another big problem that I see with newer pilots is that they don't understand the relationship between airspeed and landing. For you to have a proper landing, you need to align the plane before you intend to land, which is the center point of this awful taxiway. Keep the plane pointed at it with rudder as much as you can. And then flare it to the end, like that. Now, it's not really a great landing because we are in wind and I could have kept a little bit of throttle to keep it going. But we're gonna throttle back up, go up again. There is enough wind that you may not be able to see it, but trust me, the plane can feel it and I can feel it on the sticks based on the way the plane is responding. But a lot of the newer pilots, they don't understand that you do need some speed to land a lot of the time, especially with a plane like this. So if we keep throttle applied, get nice and low, and then chop the throttle, and add a little bit as needed, you can make for a decent landing.
So that's how it's done in reality, but let's see how it's done on the simulator. I set up RealFlight to be a little more aggressive than the wind conditions that I was dealing with while filming the Vo G10. Notice how I bank the plane into a turn using rudder and matching aileron while I pull the elevator stick. This keeps the plane coordinated. In other words, the nose points into the turn rather than pointing away from it. An uncoordinated turn is sloppy looking and more prone to stalling. Of course, I say sloppy looking while the simulated winds are kicking this timber around and making it difficult to line up. Ideally, you wouldn't even fly in these winds as a beginner. We'll get to why in a bit, but to put it bluntly, it can be really hard, even for someone who's flown a lot, and it's not always fun.
It doesn't have to be a textbook beautiful landing like the stuff I try to show on Instagram and YouTube Shorts, but it does need to be something where the plane can come back and be flown again. I know there's an old adage where a good landing is one that you can walk away from, or or a great landing is where the airplane can fly again, or whatever. Really, that's kind of a cliche. The whole point of flight really is to bring the plane back safely every time if you can. Just a little bit of throttle, and then chop it right as you get down to the bottom, and then it lands. None of this is terribly difficult. It becomes much easier with practice.
I mentioned stalls, but I didn't explain what they are or how to recognize them, so lesson 4. What goes up requires airspeed to fly. A stall is best described as a condition where the aircraft stops generating lift. A stall is always formed by exceeding the wing's critical angle of attack. In layman's terms, every wing can fly forward and be pulled up to its critical angle of attack using the elevator. If you exceed that angle, one or both wings stop generating enough lift to keep the plane airborne, and it will nose down or roll quickly. This is the quick and dirty explanation. Observe.
One of the biggest mistakes that newer pilots make is when they turn into the wind, they don't use enough throttle to make the turn. So when we're turning like this, I'm at low throttle, see the plane starts to stall out, and then now it's a lot harder to maneuver and the plane's sluggish. However, if I turn the plane into the wind and throttle up, add throttle as I turn, the plane is much more responsive into the wind. That's one of the main things I can tell you is use throttle when appropriate. If you're trying to make a turn, the more you bank the wings, the more likely it is the plane will stall at a given airspeed as you're pulling the elevator. That is what causes a stall. This kind of maneuver right here as I'm pulling the stick. But because I'm using throttle, it's not a problem. Now if we go up in the air and use these clouds as a backdrop, I'm going to lower the throttle and you'll see on screen what a stall looks like. There's the right wing losing lift, now the left one's losing lift. I'm just holding it, and the plane is stalling left and right over and over because both wings aren't making symmetrical lift. So one of the biggest things I can tell you about learning to fly, aside from understanding the basic stick maneuvers and what they do, is understanding the relationship between the plane needing to be in the sky with airspeed. You cannot fly without airspeed. You can either get that from wind or you can get that from throttle, but you can't get it from, it has to be a combination of both, generally speaking. Now we're flying with a strong tailwind right now. So again, I'm going to keep throttle on, bank the plane into the curve, and we're fine. But if I do that by throttling back to idle or lower, now we're banking into it, and now the plane's stalling out. So the relationship between a stall and your airspeed is very high, but it's also true that a plane can stall at any airspeed. So generally speaking, it just means don't yank the plane around too much. Don't do that, or this, because you can see the plane's kind of going in its own direction. So if I pull it at us right now and pull it, you see how it rolled to the right even though it's pulling it to the left? That's because one of the wings stalled and it caused it to roll.
Lesson 5. Center of gravity, gyros, and you, or why artificial stability is your friend. We'll touch on the concept of center of gravity in this section, but it's important to know that there's a strong relationship between an aft center of gravity and how well a gyro can stabilize a plane. Gyros get a bad rap from people who literally don't know how they work. The word gyro is often associated with autopilot systems like safe, which is technically kind of true, but also very far from it at the same time. A gyro assists you with keeping the plane stable in winds in its most basic form. It can also be used to stabilize an intentionally unstable airframe. The word gyro itself can be used as a point of contention for cantankerous people who feel the need to lord their superiority over you because they don't use artificial stability. It's a tool like anything else, people just choose to be tools about them.
made it.
That last bit of wind shear, you saw that?
Yeah, I thought it was going into the ground.
I did too. For those of you guys who are newer pilots and you're not familiar with the concept of center of gravity, well, you should be. If you've ever bent over and you felt like you're going to fall over, that's because your center of gravity is too low. I've done that a couple of times. This applies to airplanes specifically because battery placement at this scale is a humongous influence in how the plane is going to perform in the sky. If the battery's too light for the job, which this one currently is, this is a 1300 milliamp FMS battery. This battery is the correct weight for the plane, but it's not in a spot where the plane is going to balance on the wings correctly for the kind of flying that a beginner is going to be able to do. Because this is a very aggressive center of gravity, the point at which the plane balances right here. So the amount of force that the elevator and the rudder can apply at the center of gravity is very high. And for a beginner, it can cause the plane to oscillate and porpoise all over the place, which is what mostly causes, you know, beginners to have issues when they get something tail heavy or neutral, which is what this is. The plane becomes very difficult to control. But a gyro makes a big difference in controllability and can mask some of that, which is what I'm using this partially to do. I'm mostly using it to help with some of the wind that we've been flying in today too. So there's, generally speaking, you've heard the terms tail heavy, neutral, and nose heavy. For a plane to be nose heavy, you're going to probably want it to balance right in here, in this range. Neutral is about right here, and tail heavy is anything in this range. At that point, the plane is almost uncontrollable. At neutral, it does what you tell it to do, and it does nothing else. So if you tell it to go straight down like this, it's going to go straight down until you tell it to do something else. In nose heavy, if you tell it to go down like this, it's going to eventually lift itself back up, assuming it doesn't hit the ground first. Tail heavy, it's just going to wobble all over the place and be damn near uncontrollable. You don't want to fly something tail heavy. There is a reason why the phrase tail heavy planes fly once while nose heavy planes fly pluri, is due to that particular issue. So, quick crash course on center of gravity. Sorry about all the gnats in my face. It's driving me nuts. Hey guys, taking a break from our filmed voiceover segments to show you guys the Vogue G10. This is going to be a great little platform for us to show you how to fly with. I'm not going to say this is a great beginner's plane because it's made out of wood, and if you crash it, it's going to be a bunch of toothpicks all over the place. Not so good. This, however, is a great platform for a gyro in a plane. This is what a gyro does. Watch the control surfaces on the wings, the full span flaperons here. As the plane rolls left, that one goes down to force the wing back up. As it goes up, it goes down, or rather up, to force the wing back down. I'm not so good at doing this stuff in real time, which is why I do voiceover more likely lately. But anyway, more to the point, you can see the gyro correcting for the different directions that the plane is experiencing and the turbulence that it thinks it's running into. And this is why I recommend it for newer pilots, because, well, honestly, it's hard enough to fly as it is, and we don't really need to make the hobby any smaller. Now, this is all being flown with a gyro. This is all basic flight inputs. You can see the plane correcting itself in the sky. We had done a segment a few weeks ago where I tried flying the plane without a gyro. This is what it looks like. So I can fly it in front of the windsock as best I can. I'm trying to get it to go down. Attempt number 3. It's a pretty damn good landing if I do say so myself, and I say so. Oh. I don't see any reason why you shouldn't have the gyro active, which it is now. Now the plane's constantly course correcting itself, and it's staying as straight as it can in the sky. It's not hands-off, it's just a basic flight computer. Whenever it senses a deviation in the path of the aircraft or its attitude or anything that it doesn't think is correct, it's going to correct for that for you, and it does it faster than you can react. That is the main benefit of a gyro. Now, when you get into more advanced setups like the stuff that I do, a gyro can be used to maintain stability even though you get the center of gravity so far back that the plane cannot be flown without it. And that's fine, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. So if you can have an aid that helps you fly, I fly with a 3-axis gyro like AS3X. I don't see any problem with it. Even if it's a heading hold system like SAFE, where it helps auto level the plane and keep it kind of tracking straight through the sky based on where you tell it to go, there's nothing wrong with that. Just enjoy flying. If anybody gives you grief for flying the way you want to fly because you want to fly with a gyro or you want to fly foam or whatever, tell them John at Two Brothers told you to shut up. I know that sounds mean, but I'm tired of people telling me that they're getting crapped on by other people for flying a plane. If you don't like how other people fly, keep it to yourself. It's none of your damn business.
Newer pilots frequently run into people who chase them out of the hobby. The same guys who complain that model aviation is dying are the same people who give new pilots grief for not flying the way that they want them to. Life is too short to deal with people like that. You have my permission to say that I told them to knock that crap off. Confronting people can lead to anxiety, but that's not just the only source of it. Flying in general can cause it too.
I know a lot of you newer pilots, you have a lot of anxiety when you fly, and trust me, when I first started flying model aircraft, I was a nervous wreck sometimes too. But there is a thing in your brain called the amygdala, which controls your fear response. And when you experience something that causes fear enough times, you eventually get used to it, and then it doesn't cause any fear anymore. You don't get that anxiety response that causes you to have the flight or fight reaction, where you then freak out and make the wrong choice. Your piloting always improves when you have a clear presence of mind, and when you have your brain's thinking processes kind of clouded with adrenaline, it's kind of difficult to make the right decision because you feel pressured to do something at that point in time. So like, this is where somebody might freak out, but all you have to do is add a little bit of throttle to that approach to stabilize it and fix it. The biggest takeaway from this video for newer pilots is going to be, I 100% believe that every one of you has the ability to fly, and every one of you can do this, but good landings and, and good flying come from practice. The more you practice, the better you get. There are days where I'll come out to the airport and I do nothing but touch and goes over and over. Because to me, even if I don't get them perfect, it's better to practice because you get that skill set honed. Flying is a skill like anything else. The more you practice it, you better get at it. And if you only focus on the parts that are super fun to you, like maybe the aerobatics or whatever it is you want to do, if you neglect the most critical phases of flight, which is takeoff and landing, you're going to end up with a broken airplane more often than not, and that's expensive. So save your costs and invest some time into touch and go practice, because if I can do this, I like to say anybody can do it. I'm not special or magic or uniquely gifted. I've just spent a lot of time practicing, and if I can do this and help share how to do this with you and help you succeed, that's what I want to do. It's a great flying little plane, this Voji 10 that Banggood sent us. Very happy that I got to use it as a demo for training people on how to fly a little bit better. I know some of you guys are going to have questions on how to fly if you're a brand new visitor to the channel. Normally this is not the type of format that we use. Normally I do voiceover format because I kind of trip over my words a little bit less and I sound a little bit more intelligent, or so I like to think. And it's just easier for me to get concepts across. But sometimes nothing beats just talking about this in real time as I'm trying to fly the plane. So really, flight is a very complex, man-made invention, right? Powered flight. It's very difficult to do. Not a lot of people do it because it's much more difficult than other types of transportation, right? Most people aren't pilots, but most people are drivers. There's a reason for that. Driving is a lot easier than flying is. When you're flying, you have to think in 3 dimensions all the time, and it is very difficult to do that for a lot of people, but it can be done. Because if I can do this, anybody can do it, right? So, boink. The plane is a great platform for this kind of stuff because it is relatively stable if you're using heavier batteries. So, highly recommend this plane. If you guys want one, you can pick it up from the link in the description. We are not working with Banggood as an affiliate right now. I could, but I choose not to. I'm really more concerned about using this plane as a platform to help you guys learn how to fly if you're brand new to the channel. Making a couple of bucks off of selling these planes is not as important to me as the idea of helping you guys maybe who have wanted to fly but have never really felt like they had the confidence to do it. Really all this is just non-stop practice. Taking off is practice, landing is practice, doing aerobatics is practice. If you're not practicing, you are definitely missing out. Your skills could be way up there. You could be the next Jay Stusia if you just spent the time to learn how to fly and get better at it. There's nothing that says you can't. The only limit to what you can do is your own imagination and your own willingness to put up with failure, because I didn't get to where I'm at now by luck or anything but sheer force of will, constantly crashing planes, bringing them home to my wife and being like, look dear, sorry, I gotta go buy another one. I'm dumb.
No, you gotta learn how to fix them.
Well, yeah, I did do that too.
Yeah, you did.
I did learn how to fix them, but I did go through like 4 timber carcasses before I got to the point where I'm at now. So it's, you know, and I still crash, everybody does, so don't beat yourself up if it happens. But learn from your mistakes. If you're constantly making the same mistake over and over, you're doing something wrong. If you're making a different mistake, then that's cool. But if you're doing something wrong, learn why you're doing that wrong, and then stop doing it. Fix it. Yeah, pretty much. All right, so let's line it up with the runway and plop it in. Cool stuff. Hey, really appreciate you guys for watching. I hope this was helpful. This is, again, a departure from our normal format, but I just want to help you guys learn how to fly better. I want to see more people out of the flying fields. I want to see more of these planes being bought and sold, people having fun, people learning, people asking questions, and I want people to feel like this is a welcoming hobby.
That being said, one final tip that I've got is to install a windsock at your flying field. If it looks like this, I'd suggest that you don't even bother flying until conditions improve. Wind can be fun, but if you're new, it's hard enough to fly on a calm day as is. Make it easier on yourself and minimize what can go wrong. Drop us a comment below, or hop on Discord and join our awesome community via the link in the description below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.